Okay, the last video froze in the middle, and I always want to take, not that it matters, but just summarize maybe it was a little complicated, or I wasn't expressing it as well. The idea that I think Nietzsche was saying is that we have bad conscience, which is the result of violent natures turned inward. Bad conscience, guilt, is projected outward toward a God. We invent ways of appeasing that God, particularly through blood sacrifices, animal and human. Christianity comes on the scene with a further step and solution toward that, so we don't have to do that anymore. God repays himself by killing himself, which we're going to talk about with René Girard. Is a very strange idea. God appeases himself or sends his son to appease himself. Now we have guilt and its discharge. We have a system set up where we feel guilt and we can discharge the guilt. Yet when the death of God comes, that system is fractured. That system is broken. We still have the guilt, yet no catharsis for it, no way of discharging it. And this is a possible explanation of the rise in depression, because as Sigmund Freud said, depression is serious excessive feelings of guilt or self-harm. And so it's something to think about, that what do we do? I mean, because initially the death of God does seem like a liberation, but how do we handle our moral concepts? This is a larger question that Nietzsche asks us to think about. Why should we feel guilty? Why should we feel morally obligated if there's no God? If there's no God, is anything worth doing? Why should I feel guilty if there is no God? Well, you could say, well, it offends my own moral standards, but aren't those moral standards just fictions that I've given myself? Does it really matter? So these are all kind of questions that Nietzsche asks us to think about, which we'll talk more about, or I'll talk into the video camera more about. But I just wanted to get that progression there in sections 20 and 21, that the death of God brings about an entirely other problem on top of meaninglessness. It brings about the problem of, what do we do with our guilt? How do we deal with our guilt? How do we feel guilt? Why should we feel guilt? But in particular, guilt gets trapped, if you will, in the human mind.